Welcome back to the Forward Moves podcast, a place where we talk about all things marketing and operations for fitness businesses. I'm your host, Ash.
And I'm your co-host, Kira, and let's get into the episode of today. Welcome back. Today we have a very special guest with us. He has been a coach for 7 years. He's an exercise scientist and sports nutritionist. He is the coach behind Your Everyday Strength, Joshua Sternberg. Welcome to the Forward Moves podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I don't know where to look. There's so many different cameras and angles.
You don't have to look at the cameras or anything. You can occasionally if you want to.
Yeah, just stare at it directly.
Yeah, just stare at it.
If you want us to publish something, just stare at the camera. You want good content.
Yeah, because you can cut it out yourself and use it. Yeah, and you can talk
I'll
to
just clap like I do for my own stuff. So I know when. Yeah, I clap when I film just continuous.
Gotcha.
And then I just clap.
So
when
you know.
it's like to start. I just kind of know.
We used to do that at our
Where it like
last studio.
switches me into the. I'll sit there and laugh and then I'll just clap and I'll be on.
Yeah.
It's super weird. I don't know why I do it.
It must just be like one of those things that you do that it's like, yep, go time.
Yeah.
And it just like.
I think it just started that way and I just kept doing it. Now I don't realize I do it.
You got into the habit of doing it because where we used to film the podcast, we used to have to clap and used to help them sync the audio and video together to know like when we're starting and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
And then we came here and she'd be like, okay. And she would just clap automatically and we had to
That's awesome. I think it works. Like I just watch back all my videos and stuff and I'll just cut to the point where it claps.
Yeah.
And I try and cut it after the clap now because too many people kept being like taking the piss out of me about it. Because they're like, oh, you didn't clap this one. I'm like, nah, but my hands are together at the start. That's because I did clap it. I cut it out. She just kept bullying me about it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, your comments are the funniest ways on the internet, I swear.
It's so bad. There's only been a few times where I've had to be like, you got to delete that. Sometimes my mates forget that
Other people
it
can
is
see.
a personal profile, but it's still my business profile to a degree as well.
That it's not like
I'm
a
like,
personal chat.
Yeah, I'm like, that one's got to go.
Honestly, doing
Not that,
it.
like, at the end of the day, I think if there was anyone who actually took offense and didn't want to work with me because of it anyway, I'd be like, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
Up.
So.
Every fortnight when I do your strategy, I'm just cracking up.
I'll just wait. There's some really good ones this past week, and I'm like, the boys are on.
Like, look at you, how tanned you are. Like, every comment is like,
Yeah, I know.
tanned.
They love it. But they also realize that I spend that much time at the beach, and I'm just like, yeah, this is what happens when you kind of, I don't know, your own boss and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's good.
Love
I love
that. Well, we're already
We're just
so
covered
off
everything. So
track.
yeah, wrap off. Yeah, cut there.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, the listeners and us a little bit about yourself. What made you interested in coaching, and like the science and nutrition around what you do.
Cool. Yeah, sweet. So, oh fuck. Oh, I don't know if you guys swear.
Do you
on
need
this
to
or not.
clap?
No, I swear. It's all good.
No, I don't. So technically speaking, I actually started coaching at 13. I started coaching AFL when I was 13 years old. And it was just a means of, the club was like, oh, we'll pay for your fees for the year if you coach the under 8s. And my best mate and me were like, yeah, sick, this is great. Don't have to pay our fees. And so I started coaching back then, and just through school was like super active in heaps of different sports, predominantly AFL, which I played for 14 years. And then when I graduated high school, I pretty much moved straight down to the coast. So I graduated at 17, and within like 4 weeks, I'd applied for a random uni diploma just to get out of Townsville because I grew up there and there's nothing there in Townsville. So I was like, I'm going to go and do sports management, surfing studies, which I'd actually at that point maybe surfed once in my life. I had no real idea. I just loved surfing. So I was like, the Gold Coast seems like a good place to do that.
I did not know that was even a degree.
It's not a thing now. No, it was a diploma. Yeah, it was a diploma for years. So basically, I think it was just one of the guys at the uni, the professor, he was doing a sports management diploma or degree or something, and he was obsessed with surfing. So he was like, I'm going to meld my two hobbies together, and he just took control of it. And then when he left the uni, it got canned.
Gotcha.
But it was just like a means of just getting out of Townsville, basically. And through that process, like I had to stop playing footy at 17 just due to injuries. And I got knocked out too many times in a season.
Right.
Because Townsville's a very small town. And I was playing like for Resi seniors as well, so against grown men. And I was very, very small. So I was like 55 kilos at that point and just got cleaned up all the time. So I got knocked out too many times in the season, ended up with head trauma, couldn't play footy anymore, came down here, started surfing. It was no good. But I just kept going to the beach every day because I was like, there's nothing else to do on the Gold Coast, and lived that life for the first little bit. And then through that process, the professor's like, oh, if you want to get better at surfing, go to the gym. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the secret. This is the reason I'm shit at surfing, because I haven't gone to a gym. And the next day I went and bought a bag of mass gainer from the local sub store and went straight to Snap Fitness in Palm Beach.
This sounds like the starting story of like every male's gym journey, I swear.
It was just like, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going. That's it. I went to the random sub store that was at the back of like this alley in Palm Beach. And the dude was like, yeah, you need this. I was like, perfect, done. I'll take that then. Thanks. And so I started just going like off and on. I think when I joined up, I didn't actually go back for like 4 months. So I joined and then never went. And then through like that back end of the year and stuff like that, I just kept surfing and went a couple of times to the gym. Wasn't anything major. Start of the next year, we graduated uni and kind of just took like a downward spiral mentally, like hit a pretty low point, super depressed. At that point in time, I actually attempted suicide. And so as a means of me not staying at home with my own thoughts every night, I just go to the gym, because I was like, well, at least I've got somewhere to go. And so I just literally rock up to the gym at like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I had no idea what I was doing. I would watch YouTube videos. I'd like run into the toilet, watch a quick YouTube video of like how to train shoulders, and then go back out and try and emulate that on the gym floor, and just kept doing that for like ages. And then slowly but surely started to get into the habit of going, had mates who started to meet through the gym and stuff like that, which was really cool. And sort of just fell in love with training, and just, I was like, well, this is really great. It sort of fills the void of, I don't have footy, I don't have any other outlet. But at that point in time, I was also heavily into partying. So as you can imagine, fresh 18 on the Gold Coast, I had no family, no parents, no anything. I lived on my own. So it was very easy for me to get my arm twisted to go to Surfers Paradise or Cooley or Broadbeach or anywhere really for like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, just every week. Didn't really have the money to be doing so, but I thought it'd be a really fun idea to do it.
What were you doing for work during this time?
I was a casual at Trade Secret, which is now TK Maxx.
Yeah. Okay.
And also had started working for the Gold Coast Suns in retail.
Okay.
So I basically was doing retail from Townsville and just transferred down. And my boss knew the boss at the Trade Secret and was like, yeah, we can get you a job. Because I kind of rocked up down here and I had no house, no job. I had a car, but I didn't have a license. So my dad had to fly out from Melbourne, drive me down. And then I kind of just had a car that I couldn't drive for like 6 months until I actually got my license. But I drove it anyway. You know, these things happen.
Okay.
But yeah, through that process, like I kind of was like heavily into the drinking and partying, because that's where my mates were doing and that's what everyone I knew was doing. And then I was like still training, somehow would just rock up like Monday to Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday I'd be off drinking, and then restart the process every week. And then I kind of just kept going to the gym. Like I started just going to the gym. I changed gyms. I moved up to varsity. So started going to Good Life Robina when that was kind of the Gold Coast hub for the gyms back then. And met one of the blokes there who was my first coach. And just, he started doing my nutrition. So just kind of got into it that way, like with nutrition and things like that. And just kept turning up, going, started doing like just cutting, bulking, etc. And just through that process, I just really loved everything about it. Like I fell in love with training. I fell in love with how I felt. I fell in love with like the egotistical side of things, because I was 18, 19 at this point and starting to get a little bit of muscle that I never had in my life, because I've graduated school at 55 kilos and I'm 6'2". So I was fucking small.
But string beanie?
I was tiny. I was so tiny. Just played sports 7 days a week, played or trained or whatever. I was always active and just never really ate, which is where the nutrition side of things come into the equation. And then when I started going to the gym, I just got the thought process that, if I'm putting on weight, I'm getting bigger.
Right.
And so I got to like 95 kilos and I got fat as fuck.
Yeah.
Like I just got so unhealthy.
Yeah. Just a dirty bulk.
Like it was so bad. There was at one point I nearly started a burger eating Instagram, because I would go and make like the most disgusting burgers I could possibly make at like Milky Lane or Zapickle or whatever.
Yeah.
To the point where like they were like, oh, can we have this so we can reshare it and stuff like that? Like, I actually started doing like, I was like, well, I should maybe just turn this into a page because everyone else is doing it. Like there's all these other burger pages.
Yeah.
That's
so random.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I just have these weird things sometimes that I do. I was like, oh, this could be really fun. Maybe I can get free burgers out of it. Because I remember like I went to Milky Lane once and spent $85 on a custom burger.
What?
And, yeah, it was disgusting.
Was this just on your own?
No, with
Okay.
mates. But we had friends down, and so we went for that. And I ended up, like, I couldn't talk to them after because I couldn't breathe. So I just sat there. And
like meat sweats.
Yeah, I couldn't talk, couldn't breathe, couldn't eat. I was just like half dying in the corner, but that was fine. It didn't matter. But yeah, so I kept going to training and kept sort of like just doing all that sort of stuff. And then I was probably 20 at this point, and through the process of like when I was going through the depression and stuff like that, I actually dropped out of uni. I was doing a Bachelor of Business and I decided that I just hated it. And I was like, not doing this anymore. So I kept working, tried to go do a couple of different jobs. I was very, very fortunate in the fact that the manager of Trade Secret, he took a liking to me and was like super supportive, knew I was here on my own, was always super supportive of like pushing me to go to the gym and avoid the partying. So he was like really trying to push me in a really positive direction. And at 19, he made me the duty manager of Trade Secret, which was really cool.
Wow.
Because I was kind of like, I didn't really have anywhere I was going. I didn't really know what I was going to do. But the thing was, is the day he was going to tell me, I actually got arrested in Surfers the night before and locked up. So I didn't go to my shift that next day because I was locked up in Southport Watch House. And I ended up getting one of my work friends because I walked to her house. She drove me home. She went and worked my shift for me. And then I came in the next day and he's like, come and talk to me. And he's just like, you need to pull your fucking head in. Like, you need to grow up because I was going to tell you yesterday that you got a promotion. And now I'm half contemplating even giving you that. And I was like, shit, okay.
Bit of a reality
Yeah, it was a bit of a reality check, but it was really well needed. Like he was incredibly supportive. There was a couple of times where I had gotten other jobs and had quit, but he would always keep me on the books so that if like I ever needed something, I could always just come back. And there was twice where that happened where I would just be like, hey, so this didn't really work out, so I'm going to come back if that's okay. And he would always like help me out and stuff like that. Had this belief in me that like I didn't necessarily think I had in myself at that point, and was really trying to push me in the direction of training. He's like, man, go do your training. Go do that. And then I was tossing up, so I was maybe 19 at this point. And I was tossing up between doing real estate and PT. So very different careers. But for some reason in my mind, I had the thought process of like, oh, well, what's more prestigious and what's going to bring me more money? Or what, now that I look back at it, I'm kind of like, what from an egotistical point of view is going to look better to other people? And I was like, oh, business, like real estate, professional, have to wear a suit every day, like got to look nice, all this stuff. And I did that for like 6 months and hated it. I absolutely detested it. Like it was the shittest thing I think I've ever done, because I worked out now why, but I like have a massive joy in helping people. Like I actively love helping people. And I thought by doing that, I was actually helping people because I was getting them into their dream homes, etc. But then we were kind of getting taught to be like, oh, well, okay, this is how you deceive the buyer to get more money out of them, to get more money for the seller. Then this is how you deceive the seller so you can get a better percentage. And I was like, fuck, I don't really like this.
It started to be less about helping people, more about lying, like how good you can lie.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't really think this is great. So through that process, I ended up getting made redundant, funnily enough, because I hated the job. And I was like, well, whatever. And I got a payout and left. And then I didn't work for like 3 months. So I just lived the Gold Coast bum life and just went to the gym every single day and went and hung out at Burleigh every day. And that was about all I really did for about 3 months. And then I got to the end of my funds and I was like, I got to go do something now. So I started working. I got a job at, doesn't exist anymore, but it was called genesis.com.au, which is like a supplement retail. It used to be quite big in the online space. They had a couple of factories here, one in Narain, Labrador, Mermaid. Then they ended up opening like a huge warehouse in Yatala. And I started doing my PT certs at that point. So I was just like, even in the interview, I remember sitting there and being like, yeah, cool. So I'm actually doing my PT certs at the moment. That's what I'm going to be doing long term. So this is kind of just something for the interim. It was a pick a packer role, like in a warehouse. So it was quite literally just, I would get a sheet of orders. I'd pick them, pack them. That was it. And within about 2 days, they were like, oh, no, like you're too good for this role. We want you in the office.
Oh, okay.
Just like making calls and stuff. Because I had all the sales experience from real estate. So despite the fact that I hated the things I'd learned, there was quite a lot of really positive things that I'd learned about just talking with people and dealing with situations and scenarios and all of this sort of stuff. So that was really good. And so I pretty quickly like moved into the office, and then I started becoming, like I became the number one salesman for their company fairly quickly. I was getting the most commission. We started doing like all these random challenges, and I was just keen as for money at that point. And they were just like, yeah, sweet, we'll just give you extra money if you do this, this, and this. And I just did it. So I became the number one salesman for them. And then within about 6 months, so I think I just turned 21 at this point, I actually got made the sales manager of the entire company, which was pretty cool.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But I'd still always had the intention of leaving. Like it was a really hard job. We would start at 7 a.m. every day, and I would work till about 6:37 every night. But at the same time, I was doing my certs. So I would start at 3:30 at the gym that I was doing my PT hours with.
Wow.
And I'd work until 6, and then I'd drive up to work till 6 or 7. Then I'd go to the gym on the way home and finish about 9 or 10. And then go home and sleep for like 5-6 hours at most and get up and just do it all again.
How long did you do that for?
Like 12 months.
Wow.
My PT certs took a long time just because I was like, didn't really have much time outside of everything else I was trying
working
to do.
full time and trying to get it done.
Didn't really worry me. Like there was a lot of really cool skills I learned within that company with like conflict resolution and just talking to so many different demographics of people and online, face-to-face, dealing with staff. Like I learned very quickly I'm not the world's greatest manager of people, or I wasn't at that point. I was very young. I was 21, so I didn't really have the skills or fucking...
I feel like, would you have been having to manage people that were older than you as well? Was that a difficult thing to also...
Older than me, younger than me. And it was hard because it was kind of like, I've always like prided myself on my work ethic and like my drive. And it was really hard when I didn't see that in others. And at that point in time, I didn't necessarily know how to communicate that very well. So I would just come across as probably a bit of a dick.
Yeah, to be like, well, why aren't you doing it?
I was like, why the fuck aren't you doing your job, man? Like, it's not this hard, bro. You have to pick a protein flavor off the shelf.
That's already been pre-selected.
It's sitting right there. You just grab it and put it in the box. How do you fuck that up? And I was like, it's not
Might not be the best way to go about it.
I have to deal with these people on the phone because you can't pick an order. And I was just like, through the period of time, like I learned how to deal with that situation a lot better. And it all just kind of kept teaching me stuff. Like I said, you know, for working 13, 14, 15 hours a day, kind of had to be motivated. And then I actually still kept the part-time job with Gold Coast Suns. So I would work like every other weekend through footy season in the retail. I did actually get offered the retail manager role for that position, but it just wasn't necessarily in alignment with like the money I wanted to make or the role I kind of wanted to move into. And then I also decided to start doing retail for Brisbane Lions as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
Like one weekend I'd be at the Suns, one weekend I'd be at Brisbane Lions, plus my full-time job, plus like all the other stuff I was doing.
That's hectic.
Yeah, kind of, it was pretty interesting, but I just kept doing it. Just kept turning up, kept going to work, kept doing it all. And then eventually when I finished my PT certs, like I had it pretty good. Like I had it on lock with this job. I made good money for my age, plus commissions, plus like bonuses and all this other stuff on top, plus the other 2 jobs. So I was doing fairly well for myself. And I remember when I finished my certs, I was kind of already doing a little bit of work with a gym here on the coast that I'd worked my way into with helping open up and things like that. And then I was kind of looking around for a different job for like a full-time role as a PT because I didn't really know at the time that it was actually a rental system. Like you pay and you go and you try and get clients and then bring it in. I just thought, you rock up to a gym and they pay you
and you train
just
people.
Train people and that's sick. So that's really fun. I can't wait to do that. And then I remember applying for a Jets in Varsity Lakes and I got on the phone with the manager or the owner and he was just like, yeah, cool. So like blah, blah, blah. This is the role. Like this is what you'd be doing. This is how it works, all this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, sweet, man. Like, that's really cool. Like, I'd love to keep this as a full-time job and then I'd do that as a part-time thing at the moment. I've been able to manage this sort of part-time stuff. So, like, I know I can do it. And he's like, no. He's like, if you're not in, you're not in. He's like, I'll just call the next person. And I was just sitting there in that moment. I was like, all right, cool, I'll quit. And so I took a 5 or 6 days holidays that I'd already had planned. And then I basically walked in on my first day back. And I was so nervous because I was like walked in with my little resignation letter and I was like, hey man, yeah, I'm out of here. Like this is my 2 weeks. See you later. And then I quit and just went work full-time PT.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for about 7 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. That's a very wide resume of what you've done. And I think there's actually a really big thing to say in one of your first roles should be customer service based. I think it's
100%.
a great skill for lots of people to learn. And
Yep.
I think some people have a negative thought around like chopping and changing jobs, doing different things, that sort of stuff. I have had so many jobs in my past and I think you can learn so much from each different one. So,
Yep.
and like you said, you learned so much from each different part that you had.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really good, like in the sense that my dad always told me that like no matter what you do, you're always going to take a lesson from it. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's something you want to do, whether it's something you don't want to do. So like the more things you kind of try and fuck up or try and succeed at, like you're going to learn a lot about what you do want, what you don't want. And through that process, like that helped me to, like when I was a trade secret, I was on the registers. So I just deal with people all day, every day. Like it was in Southport, so very interesting demographic of people sometimes.
Yeah.
And Trade Secret would bring like the luxurious snobs in as well sometimes because they're all trying to chase a bargain of the luxury brands and all this sort of stuff. So I kind of got to deal with like really different people. And that taught me heaps about just dealing with people in general.
Do you think that dealing with all different types of people has helped benefit you as a coach to be able to like know more people like as they come on as clients?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So it's helped me to be able to become like really relatable and I can kind of just talk to anyone, no matter who they are, rich, like any sort of socioeconomic background, any sort of just different lifestyle backgrounds. Like I can talk to people who are incredibly wealthy, successful, and I can talk to people who are the most bogan in the world. And I can kind of relate to all of them because I've worked with all of them to some capacity or some degree, or I've like known how to deal with them. One of my main roles when I was at Genesis was conflict resolution. So like how to de-escalate customers who were like quite pissed off. And there's multiple times, and this was my favorite bonus to get, was if I could de-escalate and upsell someone who was complaining, I would get like 50% of the sale. So I just do that all the time because I was just motivated by money. And I was like, so I took pride in being able to like calm someone down to the point where I could then sell them further.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
an
was one of my favorite things to be
incredible
able to
skill
do.
to have.
But
Imagine walking down and be like, fuck.
Damn it.
the amount of times on the phone they'd be like swearing, carrying on at like one of the staff, and then I'd jump on the phone, and I was still young. Like I feel like maybe my balls hadn't fully dropped yet either. Still had a pretty high pitched voice, and they'd be like confused by the end of the call as to how they bought more or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sweet man, so I'll just get that shipped out to you. Like I'll get it express. I'll cover the express shipping. Like, and then they'd come back and they'd be like, oh, I just want to deal with him.
Yeah.
So it worked really well for me. But it has definitely taught me a lot. And like working with Jets, I worked with like a large demographic of people. And then through that process of working at Jets, I actually got scouted by the PT manager at EMF. So he was someone that I'd kind of established a relationship with because the PT industry when I first started was nothing like it is today. It was so different. There was no business coaches. There was no Instagram coaches. There was no training courses, mentorship, nothing. There was like nothing at all. It was pretty much like, if you can find shit on bodybuilding.com, sweet, have at it. Because when I first started, and as I said, I didn't necessarily, I understood about like the whole rental system in the end and stuff like that, but I didn't really know business. The PT certs do not teach you anything about that shit.
That's definitely a really big missing piece for a lot of PTs
1000%.
because even when they come to us, they're like, I just wanted to coach people. I didn't know I was going to have to learn all this and I got taught nothing.
Yeah, I had no idea. And I remember just randomly coming across one of the PTs who used to be at Good Life Rabina, who funnily enough at that point in time was actually my neighbor 2 doors down. And I found his Facebook and he had launched a podcast with the PT manager of EMF and one of the other blokes who used to be a PT at Good Life Rabina as well, called the PT Performance Podcast. And I think I found this on like a random Friday night, and there was 10 episodes at this point. I watched all of them that night and just took notes about every single thing. And there was a few spreadsheets and stuff that Chris Mooney was like, reach out. I'll send you through the spreadsheets, blah, 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 and we'll have a chat. And I reached out to him a few times, and then through that process, just kind of kept in contact over that first 12 months as a PT, learned a lot, fucked up a lot, just as everyone does. And then I remember getting a message one day, and he's like, oh, hey man, just I've come on board as the PT manager at EMF. Like, if you want to come and check out the new Narang, like, let me know and we'll come and have a bit of a chat. I was like, yeah, sweet. I'll just go have a look at it. Like, I didn't really think anything of it. They were just opening this one up then. So that was like the mega
It's
archetype
huge.
it's the biggest one
pretty
they've still
cool.
got.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this at the time, but it turns out that the PTs who had applied had been like a 6-month process. So they'd applied, they'd gone through interviews, group interviews, they'd gone through trainings, all of it. And they were at the back end of like just starting. And I basically just went up and met Chris and just had a bit of a chat to him for like an hour. And he's like, yeah, sweet bro. So do you want to start? And I was just like, yeah, cool. Like, I'll come on board. This is sick. This looks really fun.
Yeah.
So I kind of skipped the whole process, which I didn't feel bad in the end. I was just like, fuck, this is cool. Like, the fact he's just accepted and taken me on, and I didn't have to do any of that stuff. So I left Jets, and all my clients came with me. The owner sat me down and was like, look, not really supposed to, but I know they're going to go with you anyway. So whoever wants to leave, just take them. So all of them came with me, which was good, because when you're starting out in like a brand new gym, every PT was fairly fresh. Like, not many of them had any clients at all. And it was also full of new members. So no one really knew anyone, but all they knew was I was the only PT who was coaching multiple people a week. So it kind of just like worked in my favor. But I was the busiest, and then they just kept coming and coming and coming, and I just ended up super busy. And then I started studying exercise science, because I always wanted to go back to uni and do that. But it was a matter of, I needed to be financially in a spot, because that was one of the biggest things when I was at uni the last time, was the finance aspect. It was really hard to make money. So being a PT was great, because I could work my own hours, change my days, change my schedule as I needed to. I'd built up a pretty solid roster of clients at that point, who were super flexible. And because I'd been quite good at being able to build rapport with all of my clients and like becoming friendly, and they all loved me and supported me and all that sort of stuff. So they're like, yes, sweet man, like if you need to change for an exam or whatever, like we'll just reschedule. And so I had all my clients who were just super accommodating to me and my uni schedule. And every semester it would change. So I'd be like, okay, guys, so I know we were doing Monday, this, that, and now we're going to be doing this. And then they were just be like, yeah, sweet, whatever. But they just didn't care, because it was just a matter of, they just enjoyed training with me.
Yeah.
So that kind of worked really, really well in my favor. And I loved it. Like, I was making over 100K a year while uni full time. I thought, this is fucking great. Like, all the kids at uni were just like, yeah, we work at like a bar, or barely make ends meet, or we got Centrelink coming in and stuff like that. And I was like, I love this. This is fun as. Uni itself was shit. I didn't really find exercise science to be much use to me.
No. Even now, or?
Nah.
Okay.
Is
that just because like the way, like the direction that your business has gone, or?
Not necessarily that. Like, originally my goal was to go back and do the Master of Exercise Physiology and become an exercise physiologist. But through the process, I kind of just worked out that exercise science is like a glorified PT course.
Okay.
You don't really learn a great deal. And the actual job outcomes as an exercise scientist in Australia is basically PT or working in a lab as a lab tech. Like, that's the only real two outcomes. Or you can use it as a pre-course to physio, ex-phys, all of these other sort of courses to actually go and do something better.
Okay.
There's no one that's really like an exercise scientist that does anything cool,
Like
I guess.
full-time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do, but that's not really what their kind of role is. It's a bit of a weird gray area. And so because I'd had all this experience through uni, I got really good grades. I was doing quite well. Had the most practical experience out of anyone. Like, not in a way that's like sounding cocky, but I kind of knew more than some of the lecturers, because I'd actually had practical experience. Like, I'd been working with clients for like 4 years by this point, face to face in a setting that they had never worked in. They'd always just been in the labs and worked off books and stuff. So that was kind of cool in that aspect, that like I could sort of hone in a little bit on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to be. And I remember having the HOD, the person who ran the whole course, basically being like, do you really would just want to work with injured people? I was like, no, not really. Not particularly. Like, I don't mind it, but it's not what I want to do every single day. Like, I don't see myself being in a clinical setting. And I was pretty fortunate through that process. Like, I'd probably spent external to uni like 30K on further education courses, from nutrition, mentors, coaching, like just one-on-one tech sessions with coaches or whatever. Through that process, I'd progressed from working at EMF as just like a generalized PT and actually started working with Nexus Performance. They took me on board as the coach to work out of their facility that they opened in Burleigh. So I'd been coached by them for about 6 to 12 months at this point. And then they sat me down one day and I really wanted to go down the strength avenue, like work with powerlifters, work with strength athletes, etc. And they sat me down and they were like, we're doing a post-comp review about one of my comps that I did. And they were like, hey, how would you like a job? And I was just like, yeah, like I want to work in a powerlifting gym. Fuck yeah, like that's sick. I want to work for you guys. Like this is great. And then anyone who knows Mickey, who's one of the founders of Nexus, knows she works very quickly. She's like, yeah, cool. Like this is just something we're thinking about at this point. And then I think it was like a day later, she's like, all right, cool. So we've got a location, we've got the equipment ordered, we've got this. You're going to have to give you 2 weeks notice. Like it was all systems go, like really, really quickly. And I just remember being like, all right, well, this is scary as fuck because I'm going from a gym that has like 4,000 members that I pretty much have pick of the litter. I work with who I want when I want. And I'm going to take a huge cut.
To start fresh.
Essentially fresh. Because a lot of my clients, like Narang to Burleigh, is a fair distance to travel. And I had a fair few of them come with me, but it was inevitable that I was going to lose a few through that process. So I remember starting, and the first like 3 months, I remember being on the phone with my partner at the time. I was like, fuck, I think I fucked up. It's like, I think I've really made a mistake here. I don't know what I'm to do. I don't know what I'm doing with money. I don't know how this is going to work. Like I'm still at uni full time. Like I'd made a lot of money, but I also wasn't very good with budgeting. So I spent a lot of money. So I kind of just like, fuck, I think I've really messed up here and I haven't made the right decision in going with this because it just scared the hell out of me. And I was on the phone to her and then I was also on the phone to my dad. My dad's just like, what's the worst that happens? He's like, what happens? He's like, what are you going to do? He's like, you can call them right now and say, hey, thanks for the offer, but no. And you'll never know what could happen. Or you just say, fuck it and go for it and try it out. And so I did that and I stuck with it and built up a pretty solid business through Nexus and helped them with the gym and launching the gym. Got involved in running seminars, workshops. I've been flown around Oz to go and do workshops and things like that. I started to get really heavy into the powerlifting community through both competing and also coaching. So I've been fortunate now to go to all of Australia's largest powerlifting events and coach, handle, just be around that atmosphere and those people. And I've always had like a weird knack for just being able to kind of not necessarily like weasel my way in, but just kind of sneak my way into something and just expand into it however I want to. Which was sick. Like I learned so much through that process.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular that probably like might stand out to you working with such a large company whilst being with Nexus? In comparison to like maybe what you wouldn't have learned if you didn't work with a company and you just stayed being a PT on your own?
So I'm very fortunate in the fact that Will, the other founder, so Will Crozier, he's like one of Australia's best powerlifters still to this day. He's still the 110 kilo reigning champion. And he also has connections around the world with some of the biggest coaches and coaching companies, from Prescript to Compound Performance to like Eugene Tao. They've had a collaboration with him and things like that. And so through that process, like I've got to meet and become friendly with like people like Jordan Scheller, Eugene, Kyle Dobbs and Matt Domney of Compound, like David Gray from David Gray Rehab, who's like arguably probably one of the best physios in the world. And I've gotten to get on calls with these people and like hang out with them and be around the best of the best and be around the people who are breaking the mold in terms of what it means to be a coach and what it means to be delivering services to people and like how to do things in ways that aren't necessarily the status quo, but they're also people who've like stuck to who they are and haven't necessarily let like the generalization of the industry mold them into like what they should be.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so successful.
So like the ability to meet and build connections with people that you potentially wouldn't have been able to have the opportunity to do, to be able to learn more and build your own like knowledge and background that you've got.
Yeah. And I've been able to take little just bits, similar to what we were talking about before with the jobs, where it's like you always learn something, a little bit about something from everywhere, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whatever it might be. There's always some sort of lesson. And I've been able to kind of do that with all of these different people. And I've been very fortunate that, like, if I've ever had a specific question, like, I can just reach out, just message them and be like, hey, you said this about this, or what's your thoughts on this, or anything like that. It's just allowed me to have a better, broader view of different demographics, different clientele, different histories. Like, people say that the way to become an expert is you do 10,000 hours, something like that. Or the fastest way is to find people who've already done the 10,000 hours, pick their brains and then do that, which is why I'd spent so much on education and learning and just trying to further my knowledge on all aspects of training, coaching, even just down to like personality stuff, like learning through exercise. A few of my favorite classes was psychology. Yeah. Because I just loved learning about the inner workings of the brain.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
And funnily enough, after uni, I was actually diagnosed with ADHD, which probably a given considering I'd been using Dexies through my whole time at uni anyway. And I was like, I think I actually have ADHD here because these are quite beneficial. So well. Kind of already knew that my whole life, to be completely honest. It was just more or less hadn't necessarily been diagnosed. And then through the process, I was talking to the bloke, gave him my school reports. He's like, yep. He's like, yeah, you got this. So
yeah, I find it so wild that we need to submit school reports to get diagnosed for ADHD.
Yeah, you need to prove that you had a history of it from being a child.
I wouldn't even know where to find that shit, hey?
I'm very fortunate that both my parents are very sentimental. I just had to message my dad and my mum and I was like, I need all my school reports from prep.
I'd be able to get mine.
And they quite literally just sent me them within 10 minutes.
Mine would have them in folders. Yeah, absolutely.
My mum and my dad had all of them from prep to year 12.
Do you know what's crazy to me though is for like males, quite easy to get diagnosed that way, right? I've been told lately that like I have friends around me that are diagnosed with ADHD and they're like, you have ADHD, like I'm telling you right now. But if you went through my school reports, perfect student. So I'm like, I feel like that can't be like
It's differently in females to males, especially in a young age.
Yeah, so as a female, like it would be such a different.
You have slightly different symptoms. It's weird. I did dive a little bit deeper into the diagnosis process throughout it all because, again, ADHD, I like to dive into why things are the way they are. And the like psychiatrists would tell me stuff and then I'd go and research and come back to him the next time. I'd be like, oh, so I was looking at this, and he's just like, yeah, sweet. It's like, good thing we've diagnosed you because I was like, yeah, but now I can focus on it so I can actually learn it better. So this is phenomenal.
Do you think since being diagnosed, do you think that you've been able to utilize it more to your advantage?
My life changed.
Yeah?
Yeah, my life changed massively.
Can you
always from a very, very young age, sounds really weird. I knew there was something different about me from a child, like from a very, very young age. I've always been a bit different. I could never really know why. I just thought I was weird as fuck. I was like a scrawny little kid who wore glasses, who looked like the kid from Stuart Little. So I just thought I was just fucking weird. And like I'd get bullied for that shit. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm just weird and whatever the case might be. Like this is just who I am. And then like through high school was a similar thing. Like every single report card was Joshua would do better if he could concentrate more. Or it would a great student, but can't really focus and distracts others and talks a lot. And like a few of my teachers realized I love sport and they were just like, well, if you don't do this, you don't get to play sport. It's like, okay, cool. Or they'd just take me out of the class. I remember in like year 12, 2 or 3 of the HODs of the departments just worked out that if they just take me out of the class and sit me by myself with headphones in, my grades went from D to like B, A, like all straight away.
I feel like it can really differ how you end up going through schooling by knowledge that teachers have as well and for them to be able to recognize it. I think it's becoming more well known now, but less disciplining and more like how to work with the child.
Well, that was one of the things is I was very, very fortunate that, again, I've always seemed to be very fortunate in the sense that like there's always been people who've looked out for me. So I mentioned it before with the manager from Trade Secret, and I've had it through other employees and stuff like that. Like people have just, I don't know, taken a liking to me and they want to support me and they want to help me. And one of my teachers, I was in the sports excellence program for AFL and she was the coach, and she kind of worked out that like, you really love sport, kind of fuck up in these other areas a little bit. You're not dumb, but you just don't concentrate and you're naughty and you're disruptive and all this stuff. So she's like, well, if I take sport away from you, you can't do it. And so she kind of started to work with my teachers and was like, okay, well, if Josh is naughty, send him to my office. Because then she got promoted to the deputy principal and she's like, send him to my office and he can do his work there and it's fine. And then that was when I kind of just like started to actually pick up and do things and stuff like that. And she came down on me hard. Like there's a few times where I'd mess up and she'd be like, all right, well, you're not playing. And I was the captain of the team from about grade 10. So I made captain. She made me the captain because she thought the responsibility would be quite good, but she was also very quick to like pull me back into line when I needed it. So having her and then having the other teachers kind of get on board with that same aspect of things, like definitely helped me. Because I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't like a bad kid. I was just disruptive and I just naughty. Like I was actually quite smart.
Yeah. I feel like you can get labeled as just like a naughty or a bad kid.
Well, I remember in grade 9, we were doing NAP plan and I still remember it to this day because the vice principal at the time came up to me and she genuinely didn't like me because she just thought I was a terrible kid, like horrible, just naughty. And she's like, Josh, it's like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, yeah, sweet. Like, you have the best NAP plan grades in the whole school. Like your reading and like responses are number 1 in the whole school from year 8 to year 12. Like, you got the number 1 in the whole school. And I was like, oh, the reading and interpretation. I was like, oh yeah, I love reading. Like I'm a really good reader. I've been able to read since I was quite young. My mum just always had us reading books and stuff. So like ever since I could remember, I've always read and been able to like interpret and discuss and all that sort of stuff. She's like, so why are you so bad in everything else? I was like, I don't know.
That's rough.
What do you want from me? I don't know. Like I'm good at reading and interpreting what they're trying to say. Like I think outside the box, I guess, a little bit. I was 14 at the time, so I had no fucking idea.
He's a 14-year-old answer
like,
that
I don't
question.
know how I'm meant to do this. But that was kind of like, it was almost a superpower in a way because even like year 12, and again, I remember this sort of stuff extremely clearly. One of my year 12 teachers, again, I was quite disruptive and naughty in his class. It was biology. And at the last class, he's like, fuck, I wanted to fail you so badly. He's like, I genuinely wanted to fail you, but I couldn't because your work was so good. And I was like,
Thanks,
I guess. Like, what is that? Are you just going to fail me because you don't like me? Like, how does that even work? If you're a teacher, shouldn't you be like, okay, this kid's smart, but he's a bit naughty sometimes. Like, I don't know what you want me to fucking do. Yeah, it's super weird that like that sort of stuff just happens. And
Yeah. And so how would you say that since being diagnosed, it has actually like helped you since being diagnosed?
So when I got diagnosed, I was at Nexus and I remember I always wanted to do things. Like I always wanted to do the content stuff. I always wanted to do like the extra work. I always wanted to do things, but I just didn't necessarily have like the brain capacity to do so. And I basically got diagnosed in June. And by December, I'd been offered the head coach role of the company.
Wow.
Because my work just like all my content stuff went through the roof. Like I started doing everything I needed to. I was doing extra work. I was able to focus. I was helping take care of like other people, helping them with content, or I was doing we were getting into more of the educational side of things. And I was I got flown up to Cairns for a gym up there to run a deadlift workshop on my own, and had been hit up by another gym locally to go and do some seminars and stuff out of their gym as well and things like that. And they were just kind of like, oh, I was like, we used to have to get up you to do this stuff and now you kind of just do it. I was like, yeah. Like I don't know, I got diagnosed. But the other thing for me was like emotional regulation. Like it actually helped me to regulate my emotions a lot better when I started to understand exactly why I was the way I was. So I'd never really known how to like regulate my emotions. And I always had like a really heightened, wide variety of emotions. So I could be like so happy or just depressed. And I never really knew how to regulate any of that.
Yeah. So it was just like volatile, like emotions kind of thing?
Volatile, but not in like, I was very good at being able to mask it. So I could like go to work in the most depressed state. And I remember going to work. I remember splitting up with one of my exes and going to work the next morning and no one knew. I was just kind of the same person that I'd always been and just all of this. And it wasn't until like a week later that people started finding out. They're like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Like I just could like I could sort of put on a mask when I needed to and do what I needed to do. But then at other points in time, like my emotions would just control how I was as a person. And it was pretty funny. I was sitting there one day and the previous manager of Nexus was talking to me and he made a joke and he said something about, blokes with emotions. And then he turned around to one of my clients and goes, how would you explain Josh? And he just goes, emotional. I was like, well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I'm always been a fairly emotional guy. Like, I'm pretty in touch with my emotions for a male, I would say. Like, I know why I feel the way I feel and how I feel. And like, I can articulate it all very, very well as to the thought processes that are running through my head. And I don't mind saying that to people so they get an understanding, because like sometimes they just don't get it. If you just tell someone you're sad and they're just kind of like, okay. But I was like, oh, well, if I can articulate and tell them why and give them an understanding, then it's kind of like you come across a little bit more empathetic, or like you can relate to people. And I think that's one of the powers that I've had with clients is I can relate. And I've had a pretty big influx of clients lately who've quite literally said they've signed up with me because of my ability to relate to them as like a normal person. Like, I can be a coach and come down hard on them if they need it, but I can also be empathetic, compassionate, come from a place of understanding, like try and help them out of their situation. And I think that's been one of my, again, use the word superpower, because I think it is, because there's nothing worse in the world of like PTs or online coaches who can't talk to people.
Yeah.
And they have no fucking ability to relate to anyone at all.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, why does my business suck? And it's like, because you can't talk to people. Like, you can't relate to a normal human being. Your thought process is muscles, and that's
Do you
it.
think that online coaches that go straight into online and skip the floor component really struggle with like being a people person?
Yes and no, because generally speaking, the coaches who I found go straight to being online coaches have gone and done like one WBFF show. And then they're all of a sudden an online coach.
FMG now.
Or FMG, yeah, whatever it is. They do that, and then they're just like, well, now I'm going to go and be an online coach. And the clients that come to them, the demographic of people that come to them, they come to them because they want to look like them. They don't necessarily come to them because of who they are as a person. And then their turnover rate's really high. But their turnover rate doesn't necessarily matter because they're always able to bring people in because of how they look, or they present themselves online or something like that.
Do you think that the people doing that is just like a quick money grab and they don't actually care
I
about?
fucking hate it.
Yeah.
I detest it with everything, because as I said, now in total, I've probably spent upwards of 60, 70K on personal development, and not just training, nutrition. As I said, like mentors, psychological side of things. Like, I've gone deep on so much stuff to be a better coach, to provide better for my clients, not just from like, I can get results. Like, it's not hard to get someone to lose weight. You cut their food, which is all they do half the time. They throw it into a TDE calculator on fucking Google. They're like, okay, well, we're going to do exactly what this says. They just don't have any emotion or ability to understand why they're doing that. They just do it. And I think it's like a bit of a kick in the guts for the coaches who actually give a fuck. But at the same time, they end up coming undone anyway, because although it's a quick money grab at the start, then when they actually do get a bit of a turnover, they're kind of like, oh, well, this isn't easy anymore. Now all the people that like wanted to look like me, they've already come and gone. They've gone to coaches who actually know what they're doing or can care or actually have some sort of practicality about them.
Even though you get annoyed by them in the industry, are you also kind of like, not glad that they exist, but they're a reason why people do end up coming to you in the end?
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a factor. I've had clients, and I've always said to my clients, like, I don't expect you to be with me long term, but I have I've got a pretty good retention rate of my clients, and I have a really high rate of clients coming back. So whether they stop for personal reasons, or they might have achieved their goal and they don't necessarily have one at the moment, or they just want to go and focus on some other aspects of life or financial or whatever the case might be, they end up coming back. So for me, it's never been an issue of like if a client leaves, I'm not like, oh, fuck you, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, sweet, bro, no stress at all. Like, and I'll touch base with them, or I'll just check in, or like whatever the case might be, because I actually care. Like, I genuinely care about them. I care about their lives. Whether they ever come back and work with me again or not is irrelevant, because it's whatever. And I've had clients who have gone and they're like, oh, I'd really like to go and see what this is. And instead of me shit talking to me and like, oh, you're going to get I can tell you what they're going to do. They're going to do this and this. Like, I just like, all right, sweet, bro, go for it. Like have at it. And then they come back. I'm like,
Yeah. I think that's a really great attribute to have.
This is why we do what we do. And then they're kind of like, oh, I now understand like why you do this stuff. And I'm like,
yeah.
Yep.
And I know that you're a really big advocate for like mental health and everything surrounding that. And you like to provide a lot of help for your clients around that. And I want to touch base and ask you in regards to becoming sober and your journey to sobriety as well. Is that a leading factor into like the mental health side of things as well? And
Yeah. So as I kind of briefly touched on, when I was 18, I attempted suicide. So I've always had that mental health side of things as a very, very big thing. That's where the name for my company came along, Your Everyday Strength, which is the acronym of YES, because I wanted to just like tell people that they just say yes. Just say yes to good things for yourself. And like Your Everyday Strength to me is a representation. And it's weird the way in which my journey's progressed, because when I first started coaching, I was a calisthenics coach, which is bodyweight style of training. I was very scrawny, I was small. I didn't have any powerlifting background or anything by that point. And now people see it as like, oh, it's because you're doing powerlifting and stuff. And I'm like, no. This has been I designed my logo myself on Photoshop off a YouTube tutorial fucking 8 years ago. Like I did all of this myself. And the name to me represents like physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. Like it's a strength. It's strength in all aspects of life, because training is just, I don't know, if you train for 45 minutes to an hour, it's fuck all % of your day. If you're doing that 3-4 times a week, it's really not that much of your week, but it's the stuff that you do outside of that. It's the external things that aren't just nutrition. It's like your sleep. It's how you manage your stress, because everything just goes in the same basket at the end of the day, whether you're stressed from work, relationships, not sleeping, not eating, you're not training properly, or like you are training and you're doing really well. Everyone thinks they go into different baskets, but it all goes into the same thing. Like you only have a certain amount of stress you can handle before the body shuts down and you get sick or you get injured or all this sort of stuff. So if they're not taking care of all of these other things, then the like 4% of their day that I take care of with the training or the nutrition doesn't mean shit. So it's definitely helped with that. And then through that process, like I used to use drinking and drugs as like a crux of just didn't necessarily like who I was. And I thought, well, I'll hang out with these people because they make me feel good, or that could be the MDMA talking. And I'll go get on the bender for 4 days straight, spend all the money I have, and then be sad that I'm broke and coming down through the middle of the week. And then I'll work all week, make good money, and then I'll go and do it all again. And then it just kept being on this repetitive cycle. And basically when I started powerlifting and getting into the transition from what I would classify as like going from a PT to a coach, it's like I wasn't just a personal trainer now. I was like, I would classify myself as a coach, which I think there is a slight differentiation in between the two. And I felt like I could give myself that title after I'd spent all the money and the years studying and all of that sort of stuff. And when I started to take my training more seriously and I started competing powerlifting and things like that, I was like, this stuff's not really benefiting me. And I think one of the bigger turning points for me was I had wanted to coach a client at a powerlifting comp for as long as I could remember. Like that was my dream, because I wanted to get into powerlifting. I wanted to be the powerlifting coach. And I was like, well, I can't be a powerlifting coach if I don't coach any powerlifters. And one of my clients who I'd worked with by that point, she was my longest standing client. I coached her for 7 years. I only stopped coaching her when I finished face-to-face. So she was my very first client at Jets. I did a trial session with her, and that's how I got the job there.
Wow.
And she was my client right up until I finished face-to-face PT last year. So 7 years. And she had agreed to go and do a powerlifting comp because she wanted to get into that aspect of things. And I remember I went out the night before and was plastered. I had to drive from the Goldie to Brisbane and I was still drunk. I rocked up to the comp and I was like, not good. I like stunk of alcohol and I was around all these coaches that I'd seen on Instagram and I was like, I want to be like you. And I was like, man, what the fuck am I doing? I was like, what am I actually doing here? I'm like, I've said I want to do this shit and I've rocked up in a disgusting state. Like it's disrespectful to my client who's put in the time, effort and energy, paid me the money. I'm around people who I should be starting to talk to, but I can't even talk or see straight properly without sounding like a fucking idiot. Stink of alcohol, so they're not going to talk to me anyway. Like it was just embarrassing. And as I started to go through uni full time, like because I was studying full time, I was trying to work full time, growing my business, and I was competing. And I had a relationship at the time. I didn't necessarily have any time for drinking. And so I started to slowly stop drinking through that. I'd still drink occasionally. Every time I did, it just didn't end up well. Just didn't like who I was as a person when I got drunk. And then I'd split with my missus at that point, and my best mate was like, oh, let's go out for New Year's Eve. So we went to this house party in Talai, and it was free, open bar. And I was just like, yes, we're on. I got maggot, like disgustingly drunk off of cruises, as you do.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, it was disgusting. Full
Like
sugar ones
sugar-free?
too. No, full
Oh,
sugar
no.
ones. I took a 6-pack of sugar-free, and I ended up drinking probably like 20 to 30 just sugar-filled ones.
Oh, my goodness.
And
That
because it was
hangover.
Talai on New Year's Eve, there was no taxis or Ubers. And my mate's missus drove us there, but she'd had a bit to drink. So we were kind of just waiting for taxi and stuff. And I was like, no, fuck it, I'll drive. And so I got in his car with him and his partner, and I drove him to his house through the back streets of Talai. Like, I couldn't even see straight, let alone drive straight. And then I was like, if I can prove to you that I can drive you to your house, will you let me drive home to mine? And this is Talai to Varsity.
Yeah, okay.
And I ended up driving myself home. And I remember as I was driving home, I spewed all over the dash of my car, all over my car as I was driving. I pulled over, and I remember thinking, I was drunk as all hell, but I was still smart enough to be like, if I'm spewing outside of my car and a cop drives past, I'm done. So I got out of my car and sprinted down a side street, spewed all in this person's garden, went back, got in my car, drove myself home, and woke up the next day like my best mate was moving into the new house we just got and all of this. I couldn't help him move because I was like, as soon as I got up, I was spewing everywhere. And I was just, that day on, I was just like, I'm never drinking again.
Yeah.
And I have not touched a drop of alcohol, and it's been 2 years.
That's crazy. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for sharing all of that being so open with us. But yeah, that's a crazy story. And I feel like there's some people that might think about going sober and trying and failing. And it's pretty crazy that like you just decided one day and then haven't touched a drop since. I feel like that's less known for people to be able to do because like they do enjoy the weekends or that high or what they get and they go back to it. Is there anything that you can provide like help or tips if somebody is thinking about going sober? Is there anything that you can share with them to
You're going to
help?
lose a lot of friends, but they aren't necessarily the friends that actually matter. So I lost people that I thought were like my best friends. I stopped getting invited out. And I was always someone who like throughout the years, I would still rock up to parties and stuff, but I wouldn't drink. I'd bring my meal prep. I'd get pissed on by the boys and just be like, whatever, like, fuck it. I don't really care. But then when I pulled the pin, I kind of was like, well, I need to detract myself from these scenarios. So I can't just rock up to the pub anymore because I'd be tempted to just maybe have a beer. Even though I didn't like beer at the time, I'd prefer cruises.
Still after that
I was
night.
still, yeah, I was fucking sugar-free cruise. I don't know what it was. But it was just like, you will lose friends, but they're not the friends that actually matter. The people who've mattered and stuck around supported me wholeheartedly. So they would opt for a coffee and a walk at the beach, or they'd be like, yep, let's go grab burgers or something like that. And I'm not against drinking. Like if people want to drink, if people want to do drugs, have at it. Like that's your life. You make those decisions. If you're doing it for the right reasons and you feel you can control that, sweet. I couldn't anymore. So I pulled the pin. And I just found something that was greater. Like I had a love that was greater than drinking. I hated who I became. I lost a lot of friends in the process of when I was drinking anyway, because I was just a bit of a dick. So I was kind of like, man, I'm going to lose friends either way. Like I'd much rather people not want to talk to me because I don't drink anymore and not invite me out because I don't drink than because I've done something or I've said something or I've just made a fucking dick of myself in front of other people. Plus I get the added benefit of like, I can go and do the shit I want to do, like powerlifting comps or on weekends. Like I never wanted to rock up hungover. I'd go and spend Saturday, Sunday mornings in the gym with all the guys training.
Yeah.
And that would kind of be like, well, why would I go and get drunk? Because now I'm not going to be able to train. So I just kind of filled that void with more positive things.
Do you think that you said earlier that you're quite in touch with your emotions. Do you think it helped that you were able to explain to people how you felt when you were in those situations that you wanted to remove yourself from? So say you were at the pub and you're like, I actually can't be here anymore. Do you think it helped that you were able to explain how it made you feel in those situations compared to like some males might not explain how they actually, like how it makes them feel and why they don't want to be there, and their friends just think they don't want to be around them, so they don't go?
Yes and no. I've worked out since then that the people who I lost as friends weren't necessarily true friends anyway, because I didn't feel I could tell them and articulate exactly why these things were.
Mm-hmm.
But they were the kind of people who would take the piss out of me and talk all this shit about the things I had done when I was drunk, but then also take the piss out of me if I wasn't drinking. So it's like I couldn't win in their eyes. I just couldn't. Nothing I could do would win. If I'd rock up with my meal prep, they'd take the piss out of me. If I wasn't drinking, they'd take the piss out of me. If I was drinking, they would take the piss out of me because of the things I'd done or the things I'd said, or like I'd been a menace or some shit like that. So it's kind of like, okay, well that sucks, but whatever. And then I just found like a better group of people. I surrounded myself with better people who it's kind of the norm within my current group of friends to not drink. And I'm friends with quite a lot of like younger people through the gym, 18, 19, 20, who've never drunk, which is wild because when I was
There's
that
a big
age,
wave of sobriety for young kids, hey?
it's huge. Like I know more people now, young people who don't drink, maybe because I'm just surrounded within that environment and that's the environment I've created for myself and curated. But that's like where it's at. But so many more people don't drink now that I know than do drink. And I was having a conversation with one of the young kids from the gym recently because he's just moved to the coast and he was like, oh man, I'm really struggling because like all my friends drink and I want to go out and drink with them, but I don't want to drink because I don't really like drinking. So I'm a bit torn. And I was just like, dude, at the end of the day, you're going to lose friends, but I can guarantee that like if you're in the gym, if you're hanging out, you're going to surround yourself with better people.
Yeah.
People trying to better themselves.
Do you think some people continue drinking because they are scared to lose friends and they can't see that there will be other people?
1,000%. Yeah. It's scary. It's no matter what you do in life, everything is going to come with fear. It's going to come with like a certain reaction. You know, me quitting my full-time job where I was paid quite well to go and work a job where I had to pay rent and make my own money was fucking scary. Me like moving to the Gold Coast at 17 years old with no support network whatsoever. At the time I had no money, no job, no house, no anything at all, had no plan of attack. Was scary, but you just kind of have to do that shit to like progress. Like me leaving Nexus last year, leaving a full-time job with a very well-renowned company where I was comfortable, scary as fuck. Like going back out on my own is scary, but it's just about choosing your scary and not wanting to be stuck.
Yeah, if you want to be different, you can do it.
Yeah, I don't even think it comes from a point of like wanting to be different. I think it's just wanting better. Like wanting better for myself, wanting better for those around me.
I feel like there's a stage of loneliness you have to go through to reach that. Like it allows you to like discover yourself, like that phase.
Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah.
I
was going to say one of the big journeys I've been on recently. So I split with a recent partner back in September last year. And one of the biggest things that I've been on over the last 6 months has been like a journey of self-love, like self-development, self-growth, self-discovery to a degree, and learning that loneliness is only lonely if you're like aren't able to confront the things that you're scared about.
Like you don't want to be left alone.
You don't want to be left alone because you just sit there with your thoughts and your thoughts scare you. I know, it's deep.
I feel attacked.
It's deep. So people, I found, and this is a personal experience. It could be different for other people, but I found that I was someone who could not be alone. I had to be surrounded by friends, or if I was doing something, I had to have music. I had to have headphones in. I couldn't walk through the shop because I was socially anxious. I couldn't go out because I was socially anxious without headphones in. I couldn't walk without my headphones in. Like I could not be alone with my thoughts.
You need to be constantly distracted.
I had to be distracted. And it's taken me like the last 6 months to be able to sit within that loneliness and like really understand and dive deep into why I feel that way, to the point where like I actually don't even know where my headphones are now. Like I don't go out. I walk out and I talk to people when I'm going on my walks with them. I purposely try and talk to people on my walks before I like try and ignore them or just like, I don't know, staunch them so they'd talk to me or some shit. Like I was always just scared of people for some reason. And I'm like, what the fuck am I scared about? I'm like, people are great. Like if you just walk past and you say good morning to someone, you say, hey, or you just smile like an old person, like it's so much better. You just feel so much better. And I found that like I've spent more time alone with myself in the last 6 months and not felt lonely once because I've kind of been able to confront why I felt that way or what was making me feel lonely and just came to peace with like self-love or whatever the case might be, spending the time developing myself, whether that's journaling, meditating, listening to podcasts, just sitting in the back of my car at the beach.
I was going to ask, was there anything that you have done to be able to get to where you are now? But so I'm guessing like a mixture of those things that you've just said.
Yeah.
So
Therapy is a big one.
I was going to say, is that anything that you went through as well? So you just like combined all of these things together and it's helped you get to where you are now. So would you like suggest, if people are listening to this and being like, oh my God, that's me, is that what you would kind of suggest, or like kind of figuring out what works for them? But
yeah, everyone's journey is going to be super different for themselves. I think it's a matter of just kind of finding what works for you. Like I've found therapy works to a degree, but they can only go so far. It also depends on how willing you are to actually express and share with a therapist as to whether you're actually going to get much benefit out of it. Because a lot of people can go to therapy and not really want to share the inner stuff that they probably should be. But it also comes from a place of like, I've had to confront some pretty deep and dark shit from like, childhood trauma and stuff like that, and just growing up and things like that. Like I've had to sit with some things that are like scary, and it's hard to sit with those things and like try and offer compassion or grace or love for yourself and like come from a place of understanding. But like for me, journaling works massively because I've always been able to articulate what I want to say quite well. And I've always been able to express how I feel. So I just find I just write it. And I could just sit there and I'll just whip out. Like I've had quite a few mates recently who've all started journaling, and they're getting a lot of benefit out of it because I've sort of guided them on this path. I'm not guiding them because I think they all need to take their own journey into how they're doing these things. But I'm like, hey bro, like here's a great podcast, or here's a really good meditation that I found the other day. Or do you want to go to Cool to Be Conscious on Saturday with me, and we can just an hour, we can go meditate and we can get out. Or this is how I journal. I just sit there and whatever the first thing that comes to my head, I just write. And then I just continue writing. And no matter what, or I just use an app that I'm like, give me a journal prompt for today and just write. Yeah. And that works really well for me. And it's just, again, I think it comes with the ADHD stuff, but I've gone and investigated further. If there's something I found that like is really hard to sit with, then I go and try and delve deeper into it rather than shying away from it. It's just about leaning into scary shit.
Yeah, it's
where
so
you grow.
relatable in the business journey too.
Yeah.
So relatable.
Yeah, it's hard.
because you lost like friends and things like that you went through.
Yeah,
and you
when
felt
you were
quite
talking
lonely.
about that phase, I was like, I went through it. And it was like only as I accepted the fact that this is my new life, that's when it like all got better. But yeah, definitely relatable.
Yeah, I think it's something that we do through life in general. And I think people are really scared about being lonely. People are just really scared about being alone when it's not really a scary thing. I think the more you actually dive into why people are scared about being lonely, and the more I've done research on it lately and the more stuff I'm reading and things like that, is it all just stems from a place of like not necessarily wanting to just be able to sit with their thoughts or sit with themselves, or understand that like you're not doing this in spite of anyone. You're doing this to better yourself, which when you better yourself, you can turn up better for other people. I found that a big thing that resonated with me through pretty much every relationship I've been in is I abandoned myself quite a lot. And it's like, well, it's any wonder I would have abandonment issues because I fucking abandoned myself. So of course other people, like you think, oh, this person's going to leave me. And it's like, well, you're leaving yourself. So like, yeah, they're going to probably leave. So like coming to a place of understanding why, and whether that's through business or relationships or personal or whatever the case might be, and looking at it through just a different lens, like taking a step back. I was listening to a podcast and someone said something about offer yourself the same grace and compassion that you would offer a close friend. Because too often we just talk shit on ourselves and we talk down on ourselves and we say negative things. And half the time we don't even mean it. They're just off the cuff comments. But those off the cuff comments, like time and time and time again. And for me at the moment, one of my big things is like, if I hear a mate of mine say something negative about himself, nah, pull your head in. No, we're not doing that. Like correcting yourself and trying to come at a place from like offering yourself the same love, compassion, grace you would offer to anyone else in your life. It's
one of those things of confirmation bias of if that's what you think, then you will find ways to prove yourself correct, and then you will continue to believe that thought. And I think that's so like variable. Like it can be taken into like any situation. So like say anyone that's like in the health and fitness or like as a client or prospective client, they're like, oh, I'm lazy, I'm fat, or like I'm unfit, I'm unhealthy. Like, and then they'll just continue to provide that confirmation bias and self-sabotage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really big thing. And something else that I heard recently on a podcast was she was saying how she was journaling and she'll use the prompt of, I'm just going to write like I'm telling a friend how I feel.
Yeah.
And that sounded like a really good prompt to use because like some people be like, where do I start with journaling?
That's a really good one. The other one that's really great, actually, funnily enough, is ChatGPT.
Mm.
You can use that and be like, give me a journal prompt.
Yeah.
So currently at the moment, I've got 4 different journals. One of them is like just my daily tasks journal that I kind of use. And then I've got a brain dump journal. And then I have like a goals journal. And then there's another journal that's like shadow work, which is a little bit more of the like deeper spiritual side of things, like trying to sit with different deeper things that I've been learning about and like facing stuff from my childhood and facing things about, you know, how I've grown up and just confronting all of that stuff and taking away that confirmation bias. Like it's, as you said, like you'll find anything you want to find. Like if you tell someone, go find a yellow car, I guarantee they'll find 10 yellow cars in 5 minutes. But if you don't tell someone to find a yellow car, they won't even notice yellow cars there because our brain is so good at blocking out what we don't want to see and really fucking good at bringing to us what we do want to see. And if we're constantly negative and we're constantly telling ourselves a certain narrative, then it's like, yeah, that's going to be true. Like, absolutely. Oh, I'm lazy. I can't stick to things. I failed after 6 weeks. It's like, yeah, because you told yourself you're lazy. You told yourself you fail at things. It's like, why not just tell yourself, oh, I can do this? Or it doesn't even need to be like a full deliberate thing like that. It can be like, I'm getting better at doing this. And that little bit of belief, that little change in like the mindset and the narrative around what you're telling yourself is the difference between actually achieving things or not.
Yeah. Like what could you do if you like told yourself different words and what you could achieve?
Humans are so much more capable than we think we are. And one of my big things is like, I love strength training and I love helping people get strong, not because, their lifts go up in the gym and that's fucking sick and the boys on the gram love to be like, yeah, that's great. We squatted heavier today or whatever. But like, it's an empowering thing. Like you can show yourself that you can achieve great things, you can achieve hard things, and you can achieve things that you've never even thought possible for yourself, which is a little bit of belief and a little bit of guidance. And I'd say I probably work with predominantly females in that sense because like from that empowerment sense, males are quite well known for that bravado, like tough, strong, big, jacked, etc. Whereas females have a tendency to probably maybe shy away from that. And so I love being able to show females you can be strong as fuck. And it doesn't necessarily mean weight on the bar, but I can promise you that if you get better with your training, then nutrition comes into play. Then all of a sudden your sleep schedule gets better. Now all of a sudden you're doing better things for yourself external to this. Now all of a sudden you have a little bit of belief in yourself. You can leave that dipshit boyfriend, or you can go and do better. You can go and explore. You can just go and do things. Like you can go and confront better and bigger things that have nothing to do with the gym whatsoever, but it's all stemmed from just like a little bit of belief as to who they are or what they can achieve. Because they don't, like, we're always inherently going to be like, oh, well, I'm only capped at this, when like the ceiling is so much higher.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well,
we have gotten so carried away.
We have to tie up.
Yeah. I know you have to go as well.
But we want to give you time to give yourself a little bit of a shameless plug.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Instagram at my name, Josh Sternberg. That's basically it. You can find me on TikTok. I post there too, but I don't really use it that much. I don't know. I feel like if people have listened to this and they actually want to find me, they'll go and find me.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram at Josh Sternberg.
We'll have your little link in the description. But thank you so much for the chat today. I've really enjoyed the conversation that we've just had. And yeah, I learned a lot. So thank you so much for sharing and opening up. That was amazing. Well, thank you everybody for listening as well. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.